What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Gandee Show. A bit of a change of scenery for episode 19. I'm actually in New York in the mountains right now, enjoying some much needed time off of work. Today's episode, we're going to talk about something that could be considered divisive to some people, but I think it's something that needs to be talked about. Just because you're sober, it doesn't automatically mean you're healthy. And that can mean a lot of things, so let's just get right into it. One of the biggest lies I believed when I first got sober was, if I could just get sober, everything else will fall into place. Don't get me wrong, sobriety saved my life, but it did not fix my thinking. And I think that's probably the biggest thing we're going to talk about, because a lot goes into this. It's not, I say this frequently, I feel like from an outside perspective, people look at us, as addicts or alcoholics, and they think, what's wrong with you? Just stop using drugs. And yeah, that's a huge part of it. But that's just the beginning of it. There's a lot of stuff that goes in that. That's why the statistics and the odds are against us, because there's so much that goes into, being able to sustain a sober lifestyle. Sobriety alone did not fix my thinking or heal the trauma that I put myself through, or magically make me honest or humble or emotionally healthy. I read somewhere that you stop developing. Why am I saying that weird? You stop developing emotionally around the time you start to use. So for me, that was 12 years old. I started using mood and mind altering substances when I was 12 years old. So if that's the case, then that means I stopped developing emotionally at 12 years old. I'm well into my 30s now, so that's clearly a problem. That's going to be a problem, right? Removing the substance was only the beginning. I want to stress that because it makes me think about like when I was on probation and the priorities I had to set for myself, because here's what my priorities were while I was on probation. It was number one, first and foremost, was my sobriety. That was non-negotiable. Sobriety was non-negotiable, and second was fulfilling the obligations I had to probation. Because if I didn't have sobriety, I had nothing. If I could not fulfill my obligations to probation, I had no motion. You can't do anything if you're sitting in a jail cell or in a casket. Removing the substance was only the very beginning of being able to start to address all these things that I just mentioned. And whenever I hear somebody talk about therapy, in a recovery conversation, I always want to acknowledge that and advocate for that, because I think it's important. Because like when I was growing up, I grew up pretty poor, and I didn't think things like therapy even existed for people like me. I thought that was something that was solely for people who had money, who were well off. And it took me going to jail to learn that there are resources out there for everybody. It doesn't matter your socioeconomic situation is not going to prevent you from getting help. And I think that's a common misconception. I know it was for me anyways. But there is help out there. It doesn't matter what kind of financial situation you're in. So, if you're watching this and you had that same idea, I'm here to tell you, I am absolutely not wealthy, and I was able to get some help in my state. And if you're having trouble finding resources wherever you're at, please reach out to us. Email me at thegandeeshow@gmail.com, and I would be more than happy to help you find resources in your area. I have some really great people on my team that would love to help with that. I've met a lot of people who are sober, but they're still angry and resentful, still controlling and playing the victim. Man, that's a big one, dog. The victim thing. And it's like, again, that's one of the lies society sold me my whole life is, I'm a victim of my circumstances, poor me, it's everybody else's fault. Or if my life wasn't like this, I wouldn't be like this. No, listen, for the most part, if you were born in America, we all have an opportunity to have a good life. In the Bible, it says, I've unlocked the keys to be content in every situation. And that means your perspective is going to quite literally shape your reality. As soon as I shifted my perspective from, poor me and I'm a victim and things are happening to me, to what is my part? Let me look at my part in every situation. The peace that I now have in my life is hard to put into words. The people that I have around me, like my people, my woman, my team of people around me, they will vouch for what I'm saying to you, because I'm absolutely not the same person as I was 1 year ago, let alone 3 years ago. And I'm approaching 3 years of continuous sobriety. It didn't just happen as soon as I stopped using substances. It was something I had to really look inward and find. And therapy really helped me with that. Counseling, one-on-one personal counseling really helped with that. I like to say a lot that sobriety and recovery is not linear. Whatever works for you, figure it out and just put your all into it. Another thing that I really believe, when I was using, there wasn't many things that would stop me from getting what I was trying to get, whatever it was. My DOC was opiates, and so anybody that is familiar with that knows the sickness that comes along with that. And I did things that I will never, ever, ever be proud of to avoid feeling that sickness. And the amount of tenacity it takes to maintain any kind of addiction, if you were to put a quarter of that energy into looking inward and addressing the trauma that we put ourselves through and anything positive, nothing will stop you from being successful. I am a living, breathing, walking testament of that. So going back to, I've met people who are sober but still angry and resentful and controlling and playing the victim and, still hurting the people around them just without the drugs or alcohol. And that is uncomfortable to say, especially in recovery spaces, because we celebrate clean time, right? We count days and we hand out chips and we clap. And yeah, all that's important. It is. I think that give credit where it's due. But being sober and being healthy are not the same thing. And sobriety is the starting point. It's not the finish line. I had to learn this the hard way. Like I said, it took me getting arrested for me to even begin to start this process, because I could not arrest the cycle of addiction on my own. It had to quite literally be arrested for me. Me going to jail is what saved my life. I hold nothing in my heart but gratitude and appreciation and respect for the justice system, the police that arrested me, the judge who gave me a chance instead of sending me to prison, all the people at the treatment facilities, Lake Geauga Recovery Centers, the Geauga New Leaf program. These things are what saved my life. And it's crazy. I'm able to sit here with a straight face and say those things when the majority of my life I grew up thinking that they were all the enemy. And they will be if you make them your enemy, but believe it or not, there are people that want to help you and they don't want anything from you. And I can't emphasize that enough. That's the victim mentality that I'm talking about, that I shifted my perspective from and looked at my part in this thing. Because, okay, so I can be angry at the cops for arresting me or at the judge for keeping me in jail. Or it's so hard to even say those things out loud now, because it sounds so silly to me, but that's how I really believed that stuff growing up. Oh, it's F the police, you know, I thought I was some kind of like gangster thug or something. That's so silly. Get a job and go to work. That's cool. You want to know what's cool? Get a job and go to work, and don't depend on somebody else. If you're a man, you were put here to be a protector, a provider, and a role model. Get up and go to work. If you got kids, take care of your kids, dude. Like, what are we doing here? Again, I had to learn this the hard way. You know, I was sober, but you know, I still wanted life to go my way. I still blamed others, and I avoided responsibility when it hurt my ego, or even better yet, I would not ask for help or advice because I knew I wasn't going to hear what I wanted to hear. I can clearly remember times where I overtly did not ask for help or advice in a situation because I knew I wasn't going to hear what I wanted to hear, and that is my ego. You know, the substance was gone, but I was still there. The same thinking, the same patterns, same fears, just now without all the fog, you know. Just clearer. I could see it all clear without the substances. The real health and healing did not start until I was able to look at myself honestly. I did 2 years of one-on-one counseling every week, once a week, and then I went to bi-weekly, and then I went to once a month. You know, and through that, you know, through having accountability to the New Leaf, the drug court program, a lot of journaling, I cannot stress enough how important it is to write. It's so important to me that I designed and published my own recovery journal, and it's on Amazon. It's awesome. The link is in the bio. If you can't afford it, I will buy one for you and send it to you if you reach out to my email. I would be more than happy to provide anybody watching this with a journal. You know, so I had to learn these things through counseling. Why do I react the way I do? Why do I so badly need to control everything around me? And why do I carry so much resentment? Why do I run when things get uncomfortable? That was a big one for me. And I know now that, you know, and when I say run, I mean use mood or mind altering substances. That was the only coping skill that I had ever learned. You know, if you start using drugs when you're 12 years old, you're not going to learn many coping skills as an adult. How many 12-year-olds do you know that know how to cope with their emotions in a healthy way? Right? The things that I just mentioned, that's not sobriety work, that's inner work. That's the inner work. That's the shift in perspective from, oh, I'm a victim, you know, why is this happening to me, to what is my part in this situation? Why am I here? How did we get here? Right? I can tell you this, today, you know, like I mentioned earlier, go to work. Get up and go to work. I can tell you, I haven't woke up one time while I'm getting ready for work and thought, wow, why is this happening to me? Dog. All of the inward work is a lot harder than just putting the substance down, though, in all seriousness. And I think I'm kind of being a little bit ridiculous right now. I do get passionate about this and kind of fired up, and so I don't want to come off as if I'm passing judgment on anybody watching this who's in that stage right now of their recovery, because again, it took a lot of work to get through that to where I'm at. But I'm saying all this to say that I am no smarter or different or special than anybody watching this. So I know that if I can do it, the reason why I'm able to sit here and speak with conviction is because I know what I'm talking about is the truth. And I know that if I can do it, anybody can. I was living in a tent a couple years ago. And today, my life is just so much better than I ever thought it was going to be. I truly believe that I was going to die addicted to drugs. And today I couldn't fathom that. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. And the devil is a liar. If you're sober and you're struggling emotionally, that just means you're human, okay? It means that you have peeled back the numbing agent and now you're finally face to face with yourself. That's gonna be hard, for anybody. Like I said, I started using drugs when I was 12 years old and I didn't spend a sober day until I was about 30. So, gosh, sometimes I think about just how much progress I've made in under 3 years. And that same progress is waiting for you. I know it seems impossible, but I promise you it's not. It's an incredible opportunity. And no matter what age you are, it's an incredible opportunity. I remember feeling like, oh man, it's too late for me. What's the point in getting sober now? Like, I have no life left. What am I going to be able to accomplish? I'm already halfway through 30. What's the point in getting sober, right? And that's why I told my little brother, like, dog, if you figure this out and you're 10 years younger than me, look what I did in 3 years, right? You can be on the moon by the time you're my age, if you so choose. If we just stop at sobriety and we don't do any of the inner work we talked about earlier, and I should have expanded on this a little bit more too, because there's so many ways, but like for me, it was probation, the accountability of probation, the Geauga County New Leaf program, the 90-day residential treatment. I did 5.5 months in NeoCap, which is a cognitive-based treatment facility. Then I went to sober living. Then I started going to church in 12-step meetings. I don't mean to make that sound daunting or like it's a lot of work, but it is a lot of work. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's not. It is a lot of work, but it is so worth it, dude. If you just stop at sobriety and you wear clean time like armor, you are a ticking time bomb, dude. And it's not even worth, like, why get sober to not address these things, right? Like, it's so worth it. I cannot emphasize that enough. If we refuse to grow and reflect on things, then we become stagnant. And stagnation is dangerous because untreated thinking will eventually lead to you seeking relief for that untreated thinking, right? Because at the end of the day, it sounds so simple, but listen, at the end of the day, we're all just human beings trying to feel okay. And that looks different for everybody. For me, that looked like numbing it with whatever I could find. Like I said earlier, opiates was my DOC, but really it was whatever. Didn't matter. It didn't matter what you had. I didn't even like to drink, but if you had something to drink and I didn't have nothing else, I'm drinking it. All of it. As fast as I can. Recovery isn't just about not using. It's about learning how to live like a regular human being. It's about learning how to show up for the people that love you and the people that you love. The people that, for me, I drug a lot of people, a lot of undeserving people through the mud. It feels good to be able to show up for the people that are still in my life. It feels good to be able to be accountable to something. All those steps I mentioned, with the treatment, the probation, all those things are really important because it's like each one is a step down from the one before, and it's really important to be able to adjust that way. In the beginning, I remember thinking like, oh my God, this is never gonna end. Like, I remember when I got into treatment for the first time, I ended up relapsing, but I remember thinking like, I just spent 5.5 months in jail. There's no way I'm gonna make it another 90 days. And now looking back on that, it was so silly because those 90 days flew by. And it was some of the most valuable 90 days that I ever invested into myself. Being able to love without being controlling, it's such a beautiful thing. And being able to feel without needing to escape from it, that is the kind of work that we talk about here on the Gandee Show. Every day, if you can just try to do one thing towards becoming the best version of yourself, then you did something good. If you are sober but you're not at peace, don't stop here. If you are clean but you're still hurting, please keep going. If you're early in recovery, know this: sobriety is what gives you a chance, but growth is what gives you a life. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to be willing. And if this hit home, please share it with somebody. All right? I love you. I'm out.